continue with other new topic, which is Employee Central architecture. So here we are going to explain about the objects we have in Employee Central, or we can say the standard Employee Central applications. So here we have four objects, for example, like foundational objects, generic objects, person objects, and employment objects. So these four objects are nothing but the entirety of your employee central. So here, I'm sure that so far you are aware about what exactly the generic objects and all. So because you have gone through already MDF. But we need to understand exactly what are the foundational objects and the person objects and along with the employment objects. But even as I told you many times, there are some changes which the changes are taking place over a period of time with every versions from the foundational objects. In the we have a number of foundational objects, but these some of the foundational objects, usually as we have some of the data models. For example, data model means a kind of XML template. So foundational objects we configure in a specific one of the corporate data model, which is a kind of XML template. Person objects and employment objects we configure in the succession data model. Okay, but like that we have a number of XML templates actually. But with regard to these foundational objects, which we have a number of them, and from the beginning we used to configure in the corporate data model, which is a kind of XML template. But from 2014 quarter 4, which means in the month of November, SAP started initiation of migration from a corporate data model, which means from a foundational objects to your MDF. The first object was cost center. Cost center actually it was a foundational object, and we used to configure the tables for a cost center in the corporate data model since it is a foundational object. But from 2014, since it was the first object, SAP started initiation of the migration. It migrated to the MDF. So from then, the cost center became an MDF foundational object. How can we differentiate the MDF foundational objects and with other generic objects? I will tell you and I'll show you practically in the system. And then again in quarter 2 of 2015, some more other foundational objects also migrated to the MDF, like department, division, legal entity, job classifications, job classification, and etc. So again, these objects also migrated from corporate data model, which means from foundational objects to your MDF. Then they became, we call it as a MDF foundational object. Of course, they are in MDF, but still they are foundational objects only. But the difference is the objects which migrated to MDF, those objects no longer requires any XML configurations. So we no longer require any XML infrastructure, the objects which migrated. So you can directly handle in MDF. That's why MDF is so powerful. And whatever the objects which are left in a corporate data model, so you are going to configure directly in the corporate data model only. But soon the objects which are there left in the corporate data model, they also will be migrated to MDF also. But don't think that everything is getting migrated to MDF. We will not be having an XML. No, we will have an XML. for certain areas of configurations. And with regard to the generic objects, you know very well about this, and I don't need to repeatedly explain the same. Now let us come and talk about the person objects. Person objects are like the data which is related to the employee information, like home address, national ID information, email, phone, contact information, biographical information, your date of birth, first name, last name. So I hope you know that whichever is related to the employee, and those objects automatically will come into the person objects. But like you are configure a generic objects, like you are going to configure a foundational objects like legal entity, division, department, cost center, business unit, like that, you don't need to configure the person objects. The person related information you are directly going to maintain while a person is being hired. So separately, you don't need to configure the data like other objects you are creating in the admin center. While a person is being hired, so at the time of hiring, you can directly maintain the employee information on the add a new employee page. In the same way, let us also talk about the employment objects. Employment objects are also the same. You don't need to configure, you don't have any specific objects like a legal entity, division, department, nothing like that. But employment objects are going to show a relationship between employee and employer. For example, let us talk about there is an info type in SAP HR 1. What is the purpose of info type 1 we have in SAP HR, which is an organizational assignment? The main purpose of that particular info type is shows the relationship between the employee and employer. What kind of relationship that you are having with your employer? As an employee, which location, which company, which position, which department, and etc. The same way, whatever the foundational objects you are going to configure in admin center, and you have some portlets. While you hire an employee, you have some portlets like a personal information portlet, biographical information portlet, contact information portlet. The same way, we also have something like organizational information portlet, job information portlet, and etc. There is a particular area that you will see when you hire an employee. On those particular portlets, they're all nothing but the employment objects, which means employment objects. But if you remember that I told you many times that effectively dated entities. I hope some of you are aware about it. What do you mean by the effectively dated entities? That means I told you MDF objects are effectively dated entities. Foundational objects are effectively dated entities. In the same way, employment objects are also effectively dated entities. How can you identify the objects are effectively dated entities or not? What is the purpose of, what is the benefit of these effectively dated entities? What happens in your employee central system when you are going to make changes to your effectively dated entities? There is a separate class for that. I will explain, and practically you will see that how powerful the features your employee central is having. In the same way, employment objects are also the same, that behavior only is going to have. Employment objects are nothing but they are also the effectively dated entities when you are having a relation as an employee with the employer. So for example, let us talk about a location or a department or a division or cost center or legal entity or business unit and etc. All these you are creating in admin center. Why? Because they are all company data. They are all company data. This organizational information you are associating or you are adding to the employee or a particular employee when he is being hired. So it becomes an employment information. It is becoming an employment objects. You don't ask like what are the employment objects like we have in a foundation. No, you cannot say that way. That is why I will tell you how to identify effectively dated entities in Employee Central. Same also with the employment objects, the same behavior. So that is why there is a separate class we will be taking on effectively dated entities in Employee Center. You don't find this topic anywhere. But I will explain with the different scenarios and we will do it all those scenarios and I'll show you. So automatically it's going to be very easy for you to understand about effectively dated entities in Employee Central entire system. So employment objects are job information of an employee. Automatically, a simple example like InfoDev 1. I think those who are from SAP HR, if you may ask what is the behavior of InfoDev 1, what kind of time constraints we have in InfoDev 1, why so, and what kind of how many structures you are able to maintain in InfoDev 1, you should be able to know. Because there is some kind of relation is happening with the employee and the employer. Same similar behavior you will see with employment objects. So legal entity, division, department, you assign to the employee and that data is becoming employment objects. That's it. So these are the four objects we have: foundational objects, generic objects, person objects, and employment objects. Additionally, MDF foundational objects. These are entire of your Employee Central. Entirety of your Employee Central. Nothing beyond this. For example, let us talk about whatever the objects that you are going to configure in time off or a timesheet or concurrent employment. They are also becoming a generic objects only. Anything you configure additionally in Employee Central, they also come in the generic objects. So which means you are directly going to handle in MDF itself. Let us talk like time type, time account type, like work schedule, holidays or holiday calendar. These are all different objects again. So they are also they are, you are going to configure the same in the MDF. That's why I said many times, concentrate on MDF seriously. So now let us start understanding about a foundational objects. Foundational objects is a data that defines about your company information, your organizational information. So like you have some structures in SAP HR, right? Enterprise structure, personal structure. What do you see in the enterprise structure? What is it actually? It's your company data. Personal structure, it's a company data. Organization structure, it is also company data. It's exactly the same with the foundational objects. And these those enterprise structure or maybe personal structure, organization structure, why are you configuring? Because you want to associate that data to the employee when you hire in a peer 40 or when you maintain in a peer 30 or peer 20 and so on. The same, very similar here also. And again, the point is here in the foundational objects are again divided into three structures. We have three structures. One is organization structure, pay structure, and job structure. These three structures are having different types of objects in each structure. But whatever the objects that you are going to configure in each of these structures, they will be coming under the foundational objects, including MDF foundational objects also. Don't think that since they are migrated, so they will not come under the foundational objects. No. The behavior, the change that you can see from XML to the MDF. Only the objects are migrated from XML, which is from corporate data model, to the MDF, but still they are all company data only. They are all a foundational objects only. But in order to differentiate, they are giving it a separate name like MDF foundational objects. But still, these MDF objects are not directly. Of course, you will see included with other generic objects, but you can still segregate them. You can see the MDF foundational objects, yeah, accessing through MDF separately. You can see there is a particular path. If you follow, you can see the objects which migrated to MDF. The MDF foundational objects migrated to MDF foundational object. If someone is going to ask you, how can we identify these are all generic objects, these are MDF foundational objects, and can you please tell the path? You should be able to say. We will tell you. I'll tell you how to say all those. So now let us understand, starting with the organization structure. Within an organization structure, we have a different objects like building blocks. We have 8 objects or 8 building blocks. What are they? Legal entity, business unit, location, location group, geozone, division, department, cost center. So you see that you have 8 foundational objects. These objects comes under the organization structure. And these are all the objects we supposed to configure in the corporate data model only. But still, as I told you, this legal entity, business unit, or division, department, cost center, you configure them in MDF. Not location group or geozone. They are still in a corporate data model. And I hope that soon they will be moving, because their plan is to move most of the objects to MDF. That was SAP's plan, but by this time it's supposed to happen, but we don't know. They are delaying it. We don't know the reason. Maybe very soon you will see the other objects also will be migrating to MDF. So it happens at any cost. So here, these are, you need to buy heart. Very simple, right? Very simple. You don't need to take much risk to buy heart all these: legal entity, business unit, department, division, and etc. And all these will be coming under the foundational objects. And some of these objects are MDF foundational object. But don't think that they are separate. They are also part of your organization structure only. So now, yeah, let us try to compare the terminology that you are talking about in Employee Central with our ERP HCM system. So here, let us say that foundational objects, right? So how can you identify them in SAP system? Like we have object types, or sometimes we call them as a master data tables or transparent tables. It's very similar to your foundational objects, which means your company data. What do you configure? We have in organization structure, how many objects we have? 5 objects. We have more than 5 objects. In organization structure, we have a number of objects, but mostly we use 5 objects. We call them as a 5 building blocks in SAP HR OM. Why we implement OM? Because in order to show the reporting structure from one org unit to the another org unit. How? With the help of the relationship. That is a different case there. But still we have more than that. We have more than 5 building blocks. We have a number of them. It is up to you. But it is not like that here in Employee Central. It's a different case. But don't compare that and this. But I want to make you to understand in a simplified manner. Since I'm comparing, don't think that the same infrastructure, same look and feel will be there. No, that system layout is different, this system layout is different. And when you maintain the data in corresponding info types, master data for tables, you have like info type 1, info type 2, and etc. Or we can also call it as a transparent tables. Master data or transparent table, all these are same. And the same like that you have here foundational objects. That's a simple one. And the same way, we also have associations here in Employee Central, and the same similar to that in our SAP HCM ERP system, we have there, we call it as a relationship. And some of you know how the relationship works in SAP. And you know very well how the association works in Employee Central, because you already know about associations. We have already spoken about or explained about this in MDF, right? You know about the associations that we have explained in MDF, right? What are the multiplicity of the associations we have? How many? Anybody? What are they? Two. Very good. And associations, like you are seeing the destination and you are seeing the multiplicity association type. The same similar. Do we have we only spoke about associations on generic objects in MDF? But what about the associations? Do we have associations for foundational objects? Yes. Associations topic is not at over. Only for generic objects only we explained. But what about the foundational objects? Even for foundational objects also we have associations. Even there also we will explain. Then only association topic is complete. What is the purpose of these associations? We are going to connect one object to the another object. What is the relationship purpose that we do in SAP? Same. You are going to connect one org unit to the another org unit. How? We have a relationship types in SAP. Those you have to by heart. Like A relationship, like B relationship, or A002, B002, A003, B003, or A007, B007. You know, what do you mean by Z? What do you mean by B? But there are certain areas that you need to by heart when you work in OM, in SAP HR. But this is not this, here it's not like that. It's a different case. But similar topic. You handle this here separately, a different way, and you handle similar topic in ERP, a different way. But both of them are same. Why we use this connecting one object to the another object? But when compared to the ERP, here we in Employee Central, it is easy, very easy. Since you already know about how to work on objects in MDF, right? It's going to be very easy for you when you work on other objects in a MDF, foundational objects, or any other data model that we are going to see. Very, very easy it's going to be, since you know very well about MDF. That's a good thing. So next we have a generic objects. Say they are also like your object types or master data, transparent tables. But these generic objects we are going to work through MDF. Next we have an organization structure. Similar to that, we have an organization structure. Now we have one topic, which is a propagation. Similar to the propagation, in SAP we have a features. We have a number of hundreds of features, if you are aware of or not. Hundreds of features in SAP HR. Each feature is different from the another. We have a NUMCAR, ABKRS, PRZNT, or MODD, tariff, pinch. We have a number of them. What is the purpose of these features? They are going to auto-populate some of the values, auto-populate or auto population of the some of the fields, some of the field values based on the feature, the logic you are going to specify in the written value. On what basis do you create that particular logic? You remember? On what basis are you going to specify the logic for a particular data in the written value? Very simple. Enterprise structure, personal structure, and company code and country code sometimes. That is in SAP. But here we have a similar topic, propagation. Remember, propagations cannot be created for any of those four objects. Propagations are only specific only to the foundational objects. We have a foundational objects, we have a person objects, we have a generic objects, and we have employment objects. Can we create a propagations for these four objects? No, it will not support. I told you beginning of the class, we have a number of XML templates. We call them as data models. But propagations is a topic we are going to work on HRIS propagations XML template. We have a data model, like we have a corporate data model, we have a succession data model. The same way, when you are going to work on a propagations for a foundational objects, only for a foundational objects, it's going to support. That one we are going to work on. There is a particular data model or XML template. We call it as a HRIS propagations data model. What is this will do? It is going to auto populate some of the values based on the foundational objects. I will tell you how to work on this. But the good news is, whatever the propagations that we have been working to auto populate some of the values based on the foundational objects like a department, division, cost center, and etc. from the beginning till last year. But the good thing is, this so-called propagation, that what we have been working on HRIS propagations data model, it is no more. It's no more. It's no longer supports, but still, as you go in the as you are going to experience the market, and when you are going to work on, I told you right, soon most of the XML configurations are going to be, you are not going to handle them directly in XML. You will directly handle somewhere in an instance itself. Like foundational objects are happening the same way. In the same way, in the quarter 4 of 2017, sorry, in the quarter 4 of 2018, last year, in the month of around November, SAP has released some behavioral changes in our employee central system. What is that? One of the major change that took place in employee central system is propagations, HRIS propagations. We no longer require your HRIS propagations data model at all. Then what shall we do? For the same scenario I want to work, you can directly work in the instance through business rules, the same scenario for a foundational objects, what we have been doing in XML. We no longer require XML at all. That is why I wrote a blog on my website, and you can see that. So with the screenshots I have added, and those are verified it and very clearly explained. You can see propagations configuration based on business rules. So whatever the HRIS propagation scenario, but don't worry, I will explain how to configure, how it works, how nice it is, how interesting is this. Practical I will show you. But the same propagation scenario, what we have been doing in HRIS propagation, now you can directly go and do it in a business rules. We no longer requires, it no longer supports HRIS propagation. But remember, this is also one of the data model. So when you go for an interview, and maybe some of you go with experience, right? You should be able to tell them what happened in quarter 4 and so on. But I told you one area. When you go for an interview, make sure that what kind of changes took place in the current recent versions. Actually, they will ask you. So come to my website and you will see some of the major releases, the behavioral changes. So when you go for an interview, you should be able to explain. So that is why I'm creating a blogs. That is why you can see one of the major enhancement that you can see, the propagations that we have been doing in HRA's propagation. It's no longer here. It's going to be configured and supported through business rules. That is why the HRA propagation XML, which allows you to automatically fills from certain foundational objects and MDF foundational objects into your employment data, will be replaced by a business rules. So the existing rules in XML will be translated into on change. I'll tell you what is it. We have a time for all this and I'll explain. And why, you can see that it's simplified and neither use nor maintenance of existing XML based on base rules will be possible. It's not possible. Because I used nor and from 1811. Any future change in behavior or propagation has to be managed through business rules. It no longer requires. So no need to submit any support tickets to adjust the XML. So matter is over. So why? It increases the flexibility as a business rules allows more sophisticated logic and can be easier to handle. So that's very simple. Even in XML also very simple, but still I'm going to explain. Don't worry. I'll explain. And even before 2016, we have a different way of handling. Before 2015, if we have a different way of handling the XML, and after 2015 quarter 2, different way of configuring this HRA propagation. Both I will explain, but still I will explain the latest version also. So, but remember, every single example or scenarios we are taking, please note it down. Tomorrow, when you go for an interview, these notes are going to help you a lot. The same it is helping a lot of other people. You cannot go and revise every time the video, right? You will not have the video with you. And you will not have a time when you go for an interview. So that's why always maintain a note. So that helps you. So that is why this XML is no longer required. So you are going to handle it through business rules. The same scenario, I gave an example through business rule. This is a business rule. That's it. So that is why come back to this, and every time when you go for an interview, come back to this side. And I told you, I think last time, the areas where you need to prepare when you go for an interview. One is the latest releases for a particular product that you are going to face for in the interview, and then your SAP Activate, which I explained you in the last class, and all the behavioral changes that is taking place over a period of time. That is another area. And your workbooks, that is another area. I'll tell you how the workbooks are and how you need to handle. And then the another area is the behavioral changes that are taking place over a period of time. So please note it down. And then MDF are foundational objects, what you have done in XML and what you used to do earlier and what you are doing now. Everything you need to remember. If you are going to maintain the note, it's going to be very easy for you later. You don't need to waste a lot of time because the content is so heavy, and what you have learned, what you have experienced, you should design by your own. You cannot follow my method I'm using. You should design your own. You should understand the subject as for your methodology. So you should make it like that. If you are following my method, if you're trying to understand, that will never help you at all. Should think, should design, and every example is very important. So now let us see another thing, the same foundational objects like a legal entity, business unit, division, department, with the associations. How you see that objects are connected, one object to the another object. Now the legal entity is an object, business unit is an object, division is an object. But earlier when I created this particular screenshot, many people used to think that it is exactly going to be like organization structure we create in SAP HR. No. You created associations in MDF, you remember, connecting one object to the another object. In order to show you that this is created. It can have one-to-one association. It can have one-to-many associations. But the good news is, in 2017, I think I don't remember exactly the time, or quarter three or quarter four. I think it's quarter one only, or quarter one up to those. I'll tell you when exactly the version when I explain you this topic. There is a new feature SAP has introduced for the first time in 2017, which is company structure overview configuration. This is an additional, a separate configuration we are going to do. It is just like an additional feature SAP has introduced for the first time in 2017. What is that? Company structure overview. What are you going to do that with that? Company structure overview is, you remember you do in something in SAP HR, right? OM. What do? You are connecting one object to the one org unit to the another org unit. Why? In order to show the reporting structure. You're able to see the structure like a tree, like a hierarchy. This company structure overview is going to help you to define the hierarchy of your organization. But remember, this company structure overview is only going to support only MDF foundational objects and generic objects. Not the foundational objects, the objects which are in XML. You can only define the hierarchy. You can only define the structure for the objects which are there in the MDF. Only generic objects, only MDF foundational objects. With the help of those objects, you can define a hierarchy. Any kind of generic object. Very simple, very flexible, and very easy. You know the another advantage? You can also add the colors to those objects. Like you can see this, but I created this particular slide around maybe somewhere in 2014, if I'm not mistaken. Same example I'm giving you. You can define like this structure, the hierarchy like this, as you wanted different colors in the company structure overview. That feature is introduced for the first time in 2017 by SAP. Before that, we don't have any features like this, what you are seeing on the screenshot. That particular one is called a company structure overview. Very easy, and you can download some HTML X colors from Google, and you can copy from there those colors and you can paste it directly in the system. That is also possible. And you can define it. Very interesting and very easy. There are a lot of advantages also we have. For one legal entity, how many people are assigned? For one department, how many people are connected? What is the hierarchy? What is their history? Everything we can see. So separately, we will talk about this company structure overview. It's just an optional topic, but we will explain and I'll show you how it works and all. So now in the same way, like you have done in MDF associations, right? That is a major one. That is, you have to create it at any cost. Like that, you connected one object to the another object. That is an associations. You have to at any cost configure these associations for your foundational objects. Otherwise, you cannot hire an employee. You cannot assign these to the employee. It is not going to be. It's not going to work at all. But the company structure overview is an additional separate topic that you cannot mix it with the standard configuration that we are doing. That is different. This is different. You will be only able to configure the company structure overview if you have already created these objects in the system. Otherwise, that also not going to work. That is a later configuration. This is a prior one. So now you can see that comparing the same with the ERP and foundation legal entities, something like company code, business unit is something like organization unit or business area. Or maybe let us take a division is something like your org unit. A department is like your org unit. A location is like a personal area, a personal sub area, or sub classification of personal area, which is a geographical location. Cost center is something like cost center. You have a key in OEM for every object that you can identify with each of the org units. But here it's not like that. Department is a department, legal entity is a legal entity, division is a division. Someone was asking earlier, it was not now, it was in 2015, what is a key, what is a code we can identify legal entity? Nothing like that. A business unit, like you see a job is being identified by, there is a particular key. What is that? A job is being identified by, what is that? C. Position. Position. Yes, the same. We don't have here, we don't have like that anything. You don't need to remember. Very simplified but interesting and easy. Don't think it is easy. It is only easy when you understand, otherwise confusing. So now the legal entity, sometimes it's referred as a company. It's like independent legal entity. And one more thing I want to tell you, sometimes in SAP, you cannot have more than one legal entity, right? But here, it's not like that. You can have as many as the number of legal entities also. It doesn't mean that a company can have only one legal entity. No, it is up to you how you design your requirement. It should have a meaning. It should have a sense. It should have a decision. A legal entity can have one more business unit, number of business unit. A business units can be connected with a legal entity, and division is subclassification of your business unit, and a department is a subclassification of your division. And the locations are nothing but it represents about the location or geographical location, something like a personal area, and so on. So now here we have an example of how you can take a scenario of defining these foundational objects, like connecting one object to the another object with the help of the associations, like a one-to-one or one-to-many. So here we have a one manufacturing company which has three business units, like plastics, metals, and woods. So again, the business unit or the plastics business unit is having again three divisions which are being associated as a distribution, R&D, and manufacturing. And let us talk about the metals business unit is having two divisions associated, something like one-to-many, one-to-many. Something like metalworks and alloys. The same with the another business unit as a woods, and to the carpentry and timber. We can see, you can define it like that. The same thing you have already done in MDF. The same thing you are going to do for the same objects in MDF itself. Because the legal entity is in MDF now. Because it has been migrated. A business unit is MDF foundational object. Division is an MDF foundational object. Department is MDF foundational object. So you no longer require to go and it no more there a configurations in XML. But still, I will show you the earlier version or the old version of your corporate data model, how we used to do, and now how you are doing in MDF. Both I will tell you. So it helps you. So then we have other thing like job classifications. Now comes the job structures. So far, whatever I explained until here, they all come under organization structure. So we also have other objects also. We will see practically in the system when we configure. And I'll show you how to configure also. And then we have another structure we are going to move on, which is a job structure that we will see from tomorrow. And they are going to be very easy. We don't require this much of explanation at all. They're all very simple and easy to handle. So are you all, did you all understand the concept of your Employee Central objects? Mostly we have spoken about today on foundational objects. Did you all understand? Any questions from anyone? And I tell you, please prepare thoroughly and work hard. And it's really going to help you a lot. I can tell you directly. It helps you a lot when you go for an interview. So work hard and be thorough, and it is helping a lot of our consultants who are taking classes from me. Okay, and that why I'm saying to note down, because I always suggest them when you go through the class, note it down some important notes. And when you go for your interview, and you can revise it immediately. So take a little bit extra time and work hard, and we'll see you all tomorrow and we'll continue. Any questions? So right then, bye everyone. Thank you so much and see you all tomorrow.